great game or what? I'm Jeff Kurkjian with the Hall of Famer Tim Kurkjian, and we're excited to be back in person finally. I feel like we've been doing a lot of virtual episodes. You haven't been in the basement studio in Pennsylvania in a while.
Yeah, Jeff, I've done a few different things here. By the way, I've joined a little bit of your world now. I bought a CD the other day. A CD, I think it's the first one since Elton John's Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. I bought a Luke Combs CD. I went to the store to buy a CD. I went to Target. It's like they don't have any CDs there because everyone's got it on their phone. Am I right about this?
Because nobody has CDs anymore. Yeah.
Well, since I don't know how to use my phone to call up a song very easily, your godson, Carson, his new favorite song is Where the Wild Things Are. So I bought that CD, and now every day that we drive home from preschool, I pick him up every day, we listen to Where the Wild Things Are, and then after that's done, it's only a 7-minute ride, he says, put on Fast Car. So that's what we do now every time we drive home from preschool. So I am a country music guy now.
Yeah, you are. I mean, when you said joining my world and then you followed it up with buying a CD, I have to let you know, it's been years since I bought a CD. However, I am a country music morning show host in Philadelphia, and now in Boston and Las Vegas. Our show is simulcast to 2 different cities. So to Luke Combs, who I danced to Luke Combs on my very first dance with my wife, Emily. And watch this. Hold on. For our YouTube listeners, or watchers, I should say, and we'll put this on social media, this is my ukulele. This is Luke the Uke, signed by
Luke Combs.
Luke Combs.
All right, now,
It's
Jeff, again, I don't know anything about music, but that guy's voice is unbelievable.
Sensational. So you bought a country CD, and I'm proud of you for it.
Where the Wild Things Are. And Carson Keenahan, who's 3 years old, sings it better than I do. But we're singing it together, Pop-Pop and Karkar, on the way home from preschool every day.
Not too much of a high bar for singing better than you, I have to say. Now, just a quick housekeeping notice for everybody listening. On December the 10th, so 2 weeks from today, the release day, December the 10th, which is my dad's birthday, we're going to release our 1-year recap episode. So a best moment from each of our guests that joined us. So that's going to be a really exciting episode.
Right, Jeff. The best part of our podcast this year was the guests that we had on. And so we're going to take the best clip from all 35 podcasts that we did, and we're going to put it into a compilation, and it's going to run on my 68th birthday. What a great birthday present for Pop-Pop.
And we have a guest for today's episode, Jodi. She is incredible. She is the producer and the co-author of the original book, Rally Caps. You were featured in a movie streaming right now, so we're going to talk to her a little bit. I don't want to give too much away, but you were playing yourself. Took a lot of practice to get those lines down, didn't you? And so we're going to be talking with her. She is so incredible. We loved getting to chat with her about Dad's acting ability. And, of course, her relationship with her father is what inspired this book turned movie. So it's going to be really neat to talk to her.
It's a really inspiring movie. And as for my part in it, Jeff, we'll discuss that when Jodi's on, because I think there's an Academy Award in it somewhere for a cameo.
For a cameo, yeah, because you're in it about 12 total seconds, maybe.
Less than that.
Less than We'll get to Rally Caps in a minute with Jodi. We're excited to chat with her, but we have to talk. I know it was just last week, but the awards that came down. Manager of the Year, Cy Young, Rookies of the Year, and, of course, the MVPs.
Right, so we'll start with the Rookies of the Year. Paul Skeens won in the National League. Jackson Merrill had a great year. To beat out Jackson Merrill tells you how great Paul Skeens was. You could make a case. It's certainly one of the greatest rookie seasons ever. His 1.96 ERA was the lowest by any rookie pitcher who made at least 20 starts in the live ball era, 1920 on. And Jeff, as you know, I work the All-Star game from the dugouts now. I've done it for years for radio. So I'm in the dugout when games are going, the All-Star game is going on. And granted, it was his first All-Star game and he's starting. But I watched Paul Skeens pace up and down that dugout about 10 times. He didn't look at another soul. He didn't say a word. He was in a trance. And this is the focus that he has that makes him such a great pitcher. And when I checked around, like, is this a one-time thing for him? Guys who know him said, no, that's how he is all the time. Once he gets in that zone, there's no getting him out until he comes out of the game. So one of the great rookie years ever, Paul Skeens. Luis Heel won in the American League, certainly not as good of a season, but he was the American League pitcher for the month of May. And let's not forget, Garrett Cole was injured during that time. They needed someone to replace Garrett Cole. If Garrett Cole hadn't gotten hurt, Luis Heel might not even have been on the opening day roster. Instead,
Wow.
He was an absolute dominant starting pitcher the first half of the season. And for the season, his batting average against was 189, which was the lowest in the major leagues by any rookie pitcher. So two really good rookie pitchers won the Rookies of the Year.
Wow, that's incredible. Let's go on. I don't want to get ahead of myself and talk about Shohei and Aaron Judge. So can we go to managers of the year?
Yes, so Stephen Vogt won, the Guardians manager. Jeff, he had been a coach in the major leagues for 1 year. He had never managed anywhere. This was his rookie year as a manager, and he did a tremendous job, which came to the surprise of no one who knows him well. I wrote a story for ESPN.com in spring training, and I must have quoted 25 people who all said, oh, he's going to be a great manager. That's an absolute no-brainer. And Max Muncy, one of his teammates with the Oakland A's, told me he will be on a path to be a Hall of Fame manager.
Wow.
He told me this before Stephen Vogt ever managed a game in the major leagues. And it's because of his communication skills, his ability to deal with people, not just players, people of all kinds. And it's in part because his parents, when he was in high school, two-sport star in high school, his parents made him do something artistic in high school. So he was in all the school plays like you. He can sing, he can dance, and this was his way to relate to all sorts of people, was to get out from behind, the jock culture in high school and join some other culture, which allows him now to relate to everyone.
What about in the National League, Pat Murphy?
Pat Murphy did a great job for the Milwaukee Brewers. Keep in mind, the previous manager for the Brewers was Craig Counsell. His mentor was Pat Murphy. He brought Pat Murphy in to basically teach him how to manage. And, Craig Counsell's one of the best managers in baseball. So now the professor, Pat Murphy, takes over for Craig Counsell, and they win the NL Central going away. I certainly didn't see that happening. Also, Pat Murphy is a very innovative guy. For an older guy, I mean, he's almost as old as me. For an older guy, he's very inventive. He's very, he always finds a new way to get about things. I remember writing in 2021, he told all the pitchers on the Brewers, he was then the bench coach of the Brewers, if you draw a walk in a major league game, this is when pitchers were still allowed to hit. If you draw a walk without swinging the bat during an at-bat, you will get a 4-foot wooden statue that will stand up in your locker as a tribute to you, a pitcher drawing a walk in a major league game without swinging the bat. Meaning it just shows plate discipline, everything else. That was a Pat Murphy idea, and that kind of innovation that he would use, which also got a big laugh from most of the team. That's one reason why he's the manager of the year.
Let's move on to our Cy Young Award winners and Tarek Skubal.
Right. He was a unanimous choice for the Detroit Tigers, as he should have been. He won the Triple Crown of pitching. That is, of course, led the league in wins, ERA, and strikeouts. No one else should have gotten a first-place vote. And what makes him so special, Jeff, is he throws 100 miles an hour, but he has an elite changeup. And when you have an elite changeup, and you've got 100 in your back pocket, you can't look for 100. Otherwise, you're not getting to the changeup. And if you look for the changeup, you have zero chance of getting to 100. He is going to be one of the dominant pitchers in baseball the next 5 years because he's a big, strong, wildly competitive kid.
On to the National League Cy Young.
Right, and Chris Sale won. He did not win unanimously, which was a bit of a surprise because he won the Triple Crown in the National League. But your boy, Zach Wheeler of the Phillies, led the league in innings pitched, had a tremendous season. So I wouldn't go against anyone who voted for Zach Wheeler, but I had an NL Cy Young vote this year, and I voted for Chris Sale. And he's also the comeback player of the year in the National League because of all the time he's missed with injuries. And then to go out there and have that kind of season, really impressive.
Talk about injuries for his teammates and his fellow pitching staff. They needed somebody to step up, and he needed to be Chris Sale of old, and he was the best Chris Sale we've seen.
Right, absolutely.
Speaking of the best, the MVPs, where do we even start with these two? How cool was it to have both MVPs in the World Series up against each other, despite them both not playing very well? But that doesn't matter. Aaron Judge, the AL MVP.
Right, the unanimous AL MVP, as he should have been. Jeff, when you start to look at the really advanced metrics, which I don't look at very often, I must tell you, because I'm not sure I truly understand what the advanced metrics say, but the Aaron Judge 2024 season is certainly one of the greatest ever by a right-handed hitter in baseball history. And for him to get off to such a slow start and then pull it together and then carry that team and do it all while playing center field on an above-average defensive level is really impressive. And every time I watch him play, and of course I saw him throughout the postseason, to do what he does at that size, 6'7", 282, is just remarkable. I've told you a million times, Jeff, this game is built for shorter people. Willie Mays, Hank Aaron had the perfect body to play the game. And they were like 5'11", 185, 6'7", 282. And he runs like a deer, and he can really move in the outfield.
And then, of course, Shohei Ohtani.
All right, so Shohei Ohtani won his third MVP. All three have been unanimous. No one's ever won more than one MVP unanimously. He's already got three. And this one wasn't as impressive as the other two because he was pitching in the other two, but it's still amazing that he gave up pitching, had to because of an injury. He takes on a full-time DH role, which he never truly had, and then goes out and says, all right, what can I do that no one else has done? He goes 50-50 with room to spare, first player ever, 50 homers, 50 steals. And I told you, Jeff, when I checked with the Dodger guys in spring training about, tell me what you've seen from Ohtani after 2 or 3 weeks. One of their coaches looked at me and he goes, everything this guy does is surgical. Every swing he takes, every time he throws a ball, every step, every move he makes on the baseball field is all designed to make him the best baseball player he can be. And he is like no one we have ever seen. We will never see anybody like him again. And now Frank Robinson, one of the most underrated players of all time, is no longer the only player to win the MVP in both leagues. Shohei Ohtani just joined him.
So, Dad, since we're finally back in person, we can bring back It's in the Cards. Even though we're in the off season, Topps actually just released their 2024 Chrome box. So I went on Amazon and I ordered it because I'm seeing people, everybody's going crazy right now, Dad, to find Paul Skeens' 1-of-1 signed MLB debut patch card. Did any of that make sense to you?
I've seen this.
It's like the modern day golden ticket.
So someone is going to open up a packet of cards. I mean, what if we found it in there?
Okay, I want to make it abundantly clear. If we find this card in here,
right.
Topps did not send us this pack. I ordered this on a little tiny startup website called Amazon.com, and I had them deliver it to my door. So if we find Paul Skeens...
If we find that card in there, I'm retiring. I'm not going to do the podcast anymore.
All right. So here we go. All right, let's start with Yankees Austin Wells, a nice card there. And I'm not a card collector, right? So I don't know a hologram versus a, there are people out there that dedicate their lives to this.
Wait, Austin Wells, let me quickly tell you. So he and Buster Posey are the only rookie catchers ever to hit cleanup in a postseason game
Oh,
in the
really?
history of baseball. So I used that on the air because I was doing the Yankee games, and some guy wrote in, he goes, Austin Wells is a rookie? He looks like he's 35 years old. So I went to Austin Wells the next day and I said, you look older than, 21 years old or whatever he is. And he goes, well, it's the mustache. He goes, if I cut off the mustache, I cut off like 15 years of my life. So that's what
That's
a
what you
mustache
say
is.
about me
Right.
when I don't have a beard.
When you don't shave, Jeff, when you shave, you look like you're 14. When you don't shave, you look like you're 34.
Thank you. Next one up, probably my favorite first name in Major League Baseball, Slade. Slade Ciccone.
That's a beautiful name. Jeff, every day I look at the pitching matchups in baseball, and you look at some of the names that we have. It's unbelievable, the bizarre first names that we have, especially for pitchers in the big leagues today.
Former guest of the show from last season, Aaron Nola. We get a card from Aaron Nola.
And Jeff, I spoke at the ALS Foundation dinner a couple weeks ago, and I cried all the way through my speech about Uncle Matt. Not the point. The point is, everyone there has been touched by ALS in some form, as has Aaron Nola. As you know, he donated money for every strikeout that he got last year for the Phillies.
Yeah, his uncle passed away from ALS, so he has that connection there. We have the World Series MVP, Freddie Freeman, a holographic-looking card there. See, I'm so bad with these cards.
Right. Well, Jeff, I know we've said this before, but I feel even more confident that Freddie Freeman's 2024 World Series was the greatest World Series performance ever. He drove in 12 runs, which ties the World Series record with Bobby Richardson, who did it in a losing cause for the Yankees in 62, and he did it in 7 games. Freddie Freeman did it in 5 games, and every run that he drove in was critical to that win. And, of course, his walk-off grand slam in Game 1, the only walk-off grand slam in Major League World Series history, completely broke open, won the game, of course, and changed the series. And that's how the Dodgers won, is because of Freddie Freeman.
All right, 2 more holographic cards. We got a Joe Musgrove.
Oh, Joe Musgrove's one of my favorite guys, but he's got Tommy John, so he's going to miss the 2025 season. But what a smart guy. He came to the Little League World Series a few years ago. He watched the Japanese team take infield, and I'm standing right next to him, the Japanese taking infield. It's the greatest infield I've ever seen, and all the kids are 12 years old. He was so impressed. He said, I bet these kids came to the ballpark dressed in a coat and tie. That's how beautiful that infield was, and only Joe Musgrove could think of something like that.
Andrew McCutchen, our final pull for this pack.
Well, we're hoping, of course, that Andrew McCutchen does not retire after this season, because he's one of the great ambassadors of the game. He's a tremendous player. And as I've told you before, Jeff, if we're going to have a talent contest in the major leagues, I think Stephen Vogt is going to be the leader in the clubhouse, but number 2 is Andrew McCutchen, who can really sing. He can do tremendous impersonations, including Eddie Murphy. And that had nothing to do with this, but Nicole Briscoe, works for us at ESPN, said to Andrew McCutchen, can you do Tim Kurkjian impersonation, which, of course, is the worst impersonation ever. And when I left, he did an impersonation of me. They showed it to me. As always, it was terrible, but it was hilarious. So that's Andrew McCutchen. Keep playing. The game needs you.
That's our It's in the Cards with the Topps Chrome 2024 pack. We do have 5 more packs to open, but we're not going to do them on the episode. We should do a little opening special on our YouTube page. So if you don't follow us on YouTube, you can actually watch the entire podcast. You can find it, Is This a Great Game or What? Search on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe. It's completely free. Every episode that you see or listen to is going to be seen in video, which is great. Now, before we get to Jody of Rally Caps, I want to hear on this date in baseball history.
Yeah, we had some really fun birthdays, starting in 1960 with Harold Reynolds, my dear friend from ESPN. I worked with him for years and years on Baseball Tonight. I could tell you 1,000 Harold Reynolds stories, but he told me once when he was with the Mariners early in his career, Seattle hadn't really gotten used to the Mariners. It took a little time for them to really catch on. And Harold, he was running the streets of Seattle in the offseason with his Mariners shirt on. It was a big sweatshirt, Mariners, and a lady stopped him and said, "Oh, so you're in the Marines. I'm so proud of you."
No.
I have to say, no, I play for the Mariners. She got a little confused after that. Harold also told me once about the first time he ever faced Nolan Ryan. So
Oh my gosh.
So Harold's a rookie, and he weighs like 155 pounds. And Nolan Ryan is the greatest power pitcher ever and the hardest pitcher to hit of all time, and as mean as a snake when he needs to be, right? So Harold takes a big swing against Nolan Ryan, swings and misses, and he gets knocked down by Nolan Ryan on the next pitch because a 155-pound guy took a home run swing against Nolan Ryan. And he was so angry, he knocked him down. And Harold looks at Nolan Ryan and says, "I didn't even hit it." That wasn't the point. The point is you don't take a swing like that when you're a rookie against Nolan Ryan.
Wow.
Also in 1950, George Orta was born, O-R-T-A. George Orta was a good hitter, played the World Series, did some really big things. And I always loved that occasionally with the White Sox, he played next to Vance Law in the middle infield. So the second baseman, shortstop were called
Law and Order.
Right. So we love that. And the last one, of course, is Larry Gura. And I think I told you this story. Larry Gura was born in 1947. Crafty little left-hander for the Royals. So my buddy, the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, did his winter meetings preview on what do we think is going to happen to the winter meeting. So he's got each team, he's got possibilities for trade. So he has Larry Gura in there, and he says he probably won't be traded because he's a 10-5 man. That's 10 years in the league, last 5 with the same team, which gave him no trade rights, so he probably wouldn't be traded. But my friend accidentally wrote it as a 5-10 man, and one of the editors changed it to, and it ran in every edition, Larry Gura probably won't be traded because he's 5'10". All right, it's a short pitcher. It's hard to trade a short pitcher. That's not the point. He's a 10-5 guy, not a 5'10" guy.
That's amazing. That's in this state in baseball history. And coming up next, we're going to be joined by our friend Jody, who is the producer on the movie Rally Caps and the co-author. We were so excited to talk to her about my dad's performance in the movie and that this movie is super inclusive, fun for the family, and we'll tell you all about it coming up next. Is this a great game or what? And we are joined right now by Jodi Michelle Cutler, who saw something in my dad as an actor instead of just a broadcaster. My dad is involved in a movie that Jodi has created from bare bones, from nothing. She was the co-author of Rally Caps, the book, turned producer of the movie, streaming right now on Peacock. Jodi, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It is an honor, a privilege, and I have to say the father-son dynamic is exceptional. It is the vibe that is perfect for the moment. Tim, you are an icon, and that is why you are in our movie. So thank you for blessing the movie with your presence. It is just another dimension because you're in it. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Let's be clear, though. I think I'm on camera for like 8 seconds for the entire movie, okay? So let's not be calling me any sort of movie star here, okay? I'm playing myself.
The most critical moment. You say, put the rally caps on.
It's what the whole movie is about. And so I was going to ask you, Jodi, what did you see in this thespian of my father? You know, he regularly says he's only good at 3 things in life: baseball, mowing the lawn, and feeding the dogs. That's what we thought as kids, the only 3 things he can do. I don't think acting was on that. I was the theater one in our family, to a point where, Jodi, he told me that he was going to be in this movie. He told me when he was going to star in Brockmire. And both times he called me and said, can you give me some sort of acting tips or advice? And I said, Dad, you're playing yourself.
And that is the key. Yes. The perfect person to play Tim Kurkjian was, in fact, Tim Kurkjian.
All right. Well,
stellar performance.
All right. Well, let's get off of this and let's talk about the movie. Jodi, where did the idea come from for you and your dad to write this movie? Where did it come from?
So my dad has been my coach ever since I was a small child growing up in Baltimore. And we played basketball, softball, and we were just always a family that was passionate about baseball. And he wrote a short story about him getting hit by a baseball bat during a practice and sent it to me. I read it. I'm like, oh, that's really cute. It could be a good book. I mean, like flippantly, not actually thinking my father would be persistent and every single conversation after that would be, Jodi, how's Jordan? Write the book. Because in the meantime, my son was born and we moved to Italy where he was diagnosed as being deaf. So at the moment where my father had this unbelievable idea and short story, I was trying to teach my son how to speak Italian because I wasn't allowed to speak English with him. And at a certain point, my son was doing really well. He had hearing aids. We decided to get a cochlear implant for him. At the moment in which he got that cochlear implant, because of all the work that he'd been doing with speech therapy, with his hearing aids, he like flew. The cochlear implant gave him access to language and sound that he needed to be able to be successful. And when I saw my son becoming independent, I said to my father, I'm ready to write the book. I want there to be a strong deaf character who uses listening and spoken language, who wears cochlear implants in literature, because there is none for my son to read about. It's really important to see yourselves in literature. And from that moment, my dad and I collaborated from Italy to Florida, and boom, here it is. Here is the book. That is on the cover. There's a character with a cochlear implant. That was really important for me. So my dad has always been a huge fan of yours, Tim. He just thinks you're wonderful. And you've always been really kind to my dad and all the interactions that you've had. He's always followed you throughout your career. And when the book became a movie, he reached out to you. I know that you were supportive of the book, and then you became a star in our movie.
Well, thank you
Dad,
so much.
Can you give us the line? Let's put on our rally caps.
Yeah, but I have to say it. I really have to be in the ballpark. I have to be in character, Jeff. All right? Let's put on the rally caps. And I also got Jordan. I also talked to Jordan about pitching. Like, why can't you go out there and pitch? That was a pretty important part of the movie too, right, Jodi?
It was, because he was suffering anxiety. An important part of the movie is that our main character suffers anxiety as a result of being hit by the baseball bat. And what the movie does is work through a child's anxiety. And you came in a dream sequence where he was having that anxiety, and you made it worse, his anxiety, because he saw your face and you were telling him he needed to really get moving. So there was that.
Which is fitting, because as the son of Tim Kurkjian, I can tell he suffers from his own anxiety. He has dreams like that. It's time to get up, Tim. Time to write another book, of himself telling him that. The story, you're past deadline, Tim. We know that, that pressure, that anxiety. I think the representation, Jodi, of deaf characters was so important, not only in the book, but also in the movie, because it is so important. You're right. For kids and young adults to see themselves in the characters that they love to watch on television or in movies, right? And I think it's so cool that you were so open about that process for children who are deaf, who go through cochlear implants, and then to the same degree, those who have suffered from anxiety, right? Like you saw with Inside Out 2, another great movie that talks about anxiety and emotions. These movies are able to allow children to say, hey, you know what? I have been through that exact moment. And I thought you guys did a really good job of representing those groups of young people.
That's really kind of you to say. I want to say that our director, Lee Chipola, the anxiety aspect, he really related to that. And it was a very important part of how he wanted to film the movie. Like another dream sequence that we filmed at Field of Dreams, that actually happened. Jordy was walking through the cornfields, and it just so happened while they were filming that a tornado warning occurred. So instead of the sky being sunny, it was like overcast. So that added to the to the anxiety. And we have an important actor aside from Judd Hirsch and Amy Smart is Coach Ballgame, and he really is focusing, like he just had an Instagram post talking about the importance of a child experiencing failure, because we want children to experience emotions, and the movie makes it okay for kids to have emotions, especially young boys, which oftentimes is not the case in everyday life.
Well, Jody, you bring up a really good point in sports as well, and we've had some great guests on the show. Jeff Francoeur comes to mind, Dad, who talks a lot about youth sports, but how even as great of an athlete as he was growing up, this is not life or death, right? The kids are supposed to be out there having fun, and especially young boys. And, respectfully, I've had coaches, not my dad, who were very tough on me and made it really hard to love the game that I grew up loving. But at the end of the day, we have to remember this is supposed to be fun. I mean, it's a game. And when you talk about deaf representation, and I know Dad wants to talk about Curtis Pride making an appearance, more than just an appearance in this movie. I mean, really being able to represent as a deaf Major League Baseball player, former Major League Baseball player. How cool was that to get him a part of this movie's mission?
Well, Curtis Pride played a very important part in my life, because when I came back to the United States after my son's diagnosis in Italy, I went to a bookstore, sat down and opened. The first book that I opened was called Choices in Deafness. And I opened right to his story. And his parents used listening and spoken language, and he wore hearing aids. And I did not know that deaf people could hear or speak at that time. So he opened my world. And flash forward, my father, of course, involved in this as well, had participated in Curtis Pride's charity wiffle ball tournament. So he had established a relationship with Curtis. When we put out a casting call for the deaf actors, because we really wanted deaf actors to play the deaf actors, representation does matter, and it's very important. Curtis Pride said, "Oh, I have 2 children. They could be perfect for the movie." And so Lucas, who plays the deaf actor, is Curtis's son, has single-sided hearing loss. And Noelle, who plays Nikki, is his daughter, and she has bilateral profound hearing loss. And then Curtis, as you know, has a cameo in the movie. So everything came full circle, and we just found the most beautiful and perfect people for the characters.
Dad, that totally makes sense why Lucas was such a good player. I texted Dad when we were both watching the movie. I said, that kid can hit.
Well, that's because I told you Curtis Pride is his father. He's one of the greatest athletes I've ever seen. He's a tremendous soccer player also. I love that. So, Jody, getting back to Baltimore, I mean, it was such a beautiful Baltimore theme to this. And Brooks Robinson, who's like the greatest Oriole ever, and anyone who ever met Brooks Robinson, and I knew him exceptionally well. How much did it mean to you to have such a great Oriole connection in this movie?
Well, it's interesting that you talk about Brooks, because that's another person who was extremely kind to my father throughout the entire book process. I actually road tripped to Toronto right after the whole Cito sucks moment of the Orioles All-Star game. And they didn't put Musina in at the end of that All-Star game. My girlfriend Julie and I, we road tripped to Toronto. And who did I run into? Brooks Robinson. And he was like, "Hey." And I was like, "Hey." He's like, "I'm going to put you in the air." I'm like, "All right." So, it was very special. We grew up everything Orioles, and my dad's good friend gave him a lot of memorabilia that were used in the scenes. My dad is a huge memorabilia collector, but his friend helps him out with this. And it's just everybody from Baltimore was involved. I grew up in Baltimore and was raised with the Orioles. So it's just, it was everything. It was really family oriented. And that was an important part of the movie as well.
Jody, there's one moment where Judd Hirsch, who plays our lead character's grandfather, is talking about his daughter, who is obviously the lead character's mother, talking about her ability on the field. How cool was that? Because it kind of sounds like the relationship between Amy Smart, who plays mom, and grandfather Pop is similar to you and your dad's. Am I gathering this right?
Okay, so Judd Hirsch's character Pop is named after my grandfather Pop. However, that specific scene that you're talking about really happened. That was me. And it was a scene from the book. That was the first time I felt like, oh my God, my book is a movie and Amy Smart is me. And it was one of those, it was one of those surreal moments that I still can feel. I can feel because I got hit by Marcy. She was this really big woman and girl. And at the time I was playing Liberty Road girls softball, and she hit a line shot to the pitcher, which was me at the time, right in my leg. I mean, I doubled over. My dad comes rushing to the mound. What are you doing? Get up. We have to finish the game. So that actually happened in real life. And yes, I did hit a home run after, but I mean, I had like a bruise this big of a softball on my leg.
Jodi, I wanted to ask you, a lot of the kids in the movie look like they could really play. And it's one of my pet peeves. If you're going to have a movie, a baseball movie especially, you got to have some kids who look like they've played before. How was that process to try to find kids who actually look like they played before?
That's really interesting. One of the best parts of producing the movie was casting the movie. I will say that my dad and Lee found Carson, who's not only an exceptional actor, his expressions, his work ethic, and his ability to play baseball were just amazing. We spent so much time making sure that the kids could play baseball that we eventually got to the point where we wanted a child who wasn't that great at baseball. And like Ted say a prayer when he's on the mound doing that pitching and it just doesn't work. We chose him specifically for that ability, not ability. And so the casting process was a lot of fun because we were looking for people who could play, and they brought it.
And very selfishly, I think it was so cool from the Kurkjian family to Rally Caps. The grandfather character named after your dad, Pop. My grandfather, my dad's dad was Pop. And then my dad's first grandchild is Carson, who is the actor's name who plays Jordy. So there was just so many cool connections when it comes to this movie and our family. And then, of course, the shining star in all of his glory, Tim Kurkjian as himself. Excellent job, Dad.
As far as the kids, teaching the kids how to act, that's not an easy thing either. What was that process like?
Well, we filmed at Camp Scatico in upstate New York, and it was we were still at the edge of COVID, so we had to mask while we were doing the filming. And the kids, it was like everybody was at camp. So it was a sleepover camp. We quarantined them basically to not have any problems about COVID. So during the day, they were filming. They had to break for school because that's a requirement. And then at night, they were playing dodgeball and killing each other inside the bunks. It was like cast and crew all together. And I can tell you, Curtis Pride, he can throw a dodgeball. And there were no holds barred. And so the kids loved each other, had the best time. And so we didn't even have to really give them any directions. They just loved each other. It was spontaneous. That's the greatest thing about kids. They're authentic. And that authenticity really shows through in the movie. So we got very lucky.
Judd Hirsch is a very decorated actor. What was it like working with a guy who's been nominated for an Academy Award?
I can tell you this. Judd was on the phone to Steven Spielberg while he was filming Rally Caps. And the first time I talked to him, I was in Italy and he was speaking to me in Russian, practicing for the character. Judd Hirsch's part with Amy, they filmed in LA and the kids filmed in New York. I was not there for the LA part, but I did something called Rally Caps Hearing Loss Awareness Day at 8 major league ballparks. That's part of what we want to do is raise awareness to hearing loss. And the first Rally Caps Hearing Loss Awareness Day we did was at Citi Field. And Judd came. He came because he wanted to support what we were doing. He was such a wonderful man. And it was so kind of him. And his wife, Catherine, is a huge Mets fan. So all I can say is that he's very intelligent, kind, loves kids, and was just a pleasure to meet. He's a wonderful person.
Well, Jody, thank you so much for sharing Rally Caps with the world. Your book as a co-author and now producer of the movie, available on Peacock right now, streaming to your home. Perfect for the family to sit down and enjoy something that's family fun and baseball centric and so inclusive to so many different communities. Jody, thank you. Thank you for joining us. I've got my Rally Caps cap on here. Thank you to your dad for sending it over my way because I'm a big hat guy. And so I really appreciate it. And Jody, thank you for being on. Is this a great game or what?
Great meeting you guys and talking to you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Jody, for joining us on Is This a Great Game or What? 2 weeks from today, so that'll be December 10th, my dad's birthday, which is amazing. We are going to do a very special episode of Is This a Great Game or What? We are going to take you through our favorite interview moment from each of our interviews on the show this past season.
Right, and I can't wait to hear them again, even though we were a part of all these. Steve Russian, Mike Schur, Cal Ripken, Jim Palmer, Johnny Bench, and of course, Jeff Francoeur telling us about the time he played golf with Tiger Woods with the blessing of Braves manager Bobby Cox. Our favorite story of the season.
And so many others. 2 weeks from today, December 10th, mark it down in your calendar. Make sure you're listening, subscribing, share it with a friend, and follow the show. Thank you so much for listening. And as always, thank you for being a part of our family.